Peace, and welcome to another episode of the Quranic Remedies, where we spend about 15 minutes exploring a page from the Quran together and seeing how we can apply the verses to our lives. And hopefully, with God's permission, it helps us heal our brain, body, mind, and soul. These episodes are available on Spotify, and a link will be left in the description. So today we'll be reading from chapter 2, the cow, from verses 77 all the way to 83. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I seek refuge to God from the accursed devil. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the merciful, the gracious. أولا يعلمون أن الله يعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون. Or do they not know that God knows what they confide and what they declare? ومنهم أميون لا يعلمون الكتاب إلا أماني وإن هم إلا يظنون. And among them are the unlearned, who do not know the book except desires, and they are only assuming. فويل للذين يكتبون الكتاب بأيديهم ثم يقولون هذا من عند الله ليشتروا به ثمنا قليلا فويل لهم مما كتبت أيديهم وويل لهم مما يكسبون. So woe to those who write the book with their hands and say, this is from God, in order to trade it for a little price. So woe to them for what their hands have written, and woe to them for what they earn. وقالوا لن تمسنا النار إلا أياما معدودات قل اتخذتم عند الله عهدا فلن يخلف الله عهده أم تقولون على الله ما لا تعلمون. And they say, the fire will never touch us except for a limited numbers of days. Say, do you have an agreement with God? For God never breaks his agreement. Or are you saying about God what you do not know? بلى من كسب سيئة وأحاطت به خطيئته فأولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون. In fact, whoever earns a sin while his misdeed has encompassed him, then those will be the companions of the fire. They will be therein eternally. والذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك أصحاب الجنة هم فيها خالدون. As for those who believed and did good deeds, those are the companions of the garden. They will be therein eternally. وإذا أخذنا ميثاق بني إسرائيل لا تعبدون إلا الله وبالوالدين إحسانا وذي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وقولوا للناس حسنا وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة ثم توليتم إلا قليلا منكم وأنتم معرضون. And when we took a covenant with the children of Israel, do not worship except God, and be good to the parents, the relatives, the orphans, and the poor people, and say what is best to the people, and establish the litany and give the charity, but you turned away except a few of you, and you were avoiding. Sadaq Allah al-Azim. The God, the Great, said the truth. So this is a carry on from the last episode. Last time when we left off, it was talking about how the children of Israel and other people, they bank off people's ignorance. So it's like, if I don't tell you the truth, or I don't tell you what harms you, then you can't really, I can't really get in trouble in the day of judgment because you didn't know. So why would I be responsible if you didn't know? So God starts off by saying, do they not think that God, do they not know that God knows what they confine and what they declare? They're going to get punished for hiding the truth. So you know how that feeling when you're talking to somebody that you know they're lying to you, right? No matter what you say to them, you could see it in their facial expression. They're always looking for an excuse why they're trying to get away. Yet they say that they believe in God. But the purpose of believing in God, aside from worshiping him, is to remember and recognize that there's a day of judgment. There is no hiding. You might think that you're hiding now, but all you're doing is being an ostrich. You're sticking your head in the ground and you're thinking you're invisible, that the danger is not going to get you. But just because you stuck your head in the ground doesn't mean the car is not going to come and smash you sooner or later. Lying just because you think you convinced the person in front of you, you're not going to convince God. And you yourself is not convinced. But that's the problem with lying. Liars don't think that they're lying. It's very true. Like when you talk to a liar and you tell them, hey, you just lied there. They don't think they lied. They really need to actively think about what they just said so that they could recognize that it's a lie. And when you catch them and it's very clear, their usual approach is them laughing like, ha 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 ha. Why? Because it's not a big deal to them. They forget that God knows what they're concealing, and they're going to stand for it. Now, you could see that God is talking about here. It's unlearned is what Shuaiba opted to write for Ummiyun. This can also mean Gentile, and this is something that's important in the Quran. Based on the verse, the context, some words change their position. Okay, so like the word above in English, depending on the context, it can mean different things, right? So depending on the context, words can mean different things. This is the same in Arabic, as it is in every language. Here, ummiyun, despite it can mean unlettered, someone who cannot read and write, or someone who's unlearned, but it can also mean Gentile, based if it was being compared to the people of the book. So people who received the book from God, which we would call the children of Israel, and other groups, some certain other groups, they would be called the people of the book. And people who did not receive the book, we can refer to them as Gentile. But it still goes back to someone who's unlearned or unread, because there is no book for them to read. Okay? Now, here's something that is very important. When God is talking about the book, that is another entity that is different within the context. So if I say I read the book today, people are gonna, when we're just having a conversation, what book? Oh, the book. I was reading the Quran today, right? But I could go to a different group of people and I say, I was reading the book. To them, they're going to think that it's the Bible if I'm talking to Christians, right? I could talk about a science book, and as I'm talking about the science book, I can say the book was saying this. See what I'm saying? Now, in the Quran, the general idea, the umbrella of what the book is what is technically programmed around you. So it's not just the Quran. The Quran explains part of the book, right? The book contains a little bit of the Quran. It contains a little bit of the gospel. It contains, the book contains the Quran, contains the gospel, the Torah. It contains the history. It contains the remembrance. It has concepts of wisdom that you could learn. It has the fact that if you hit your head on the wall, it hurts. Those are all things that are written in the book, okay? So there's people here now, from a religious point of view, there are people that'll come to you and they'll start giving you their theories and Jesus is going to come back and then there's going to be a fight in the sky. And I heard that everyone on that day is going to be wearing green. Okay, well, how do you know? Well, because that's what I heard, and that's what it makes sense to my brain, right? But they're just following assumption. Those are not people that are guiding you, because you could see what they're talking about most of the time is just things they cannot substantiate with evidence from a good book, from the book of God, which is explaining the mother book, we can call it, right? Now, one concept that is very important for the human being, that attracts a lot of people, is the word of God. Why? Because you are now learning about what your God created. God said that he created this world in 6 days, right? So 6 days using words, God has made this reality that's in front of us. As God was talking, those words are being recorded in what we would consider as the book, right? So when people are discovering things in science that are true, okay, that is aligning to exactly what the reality is saying, that is also part of the book. And there's some things that are part of history of what occurred with certain people, because it is reality and it's truth. That is part of the book. The way that human works, if people are understanding concepts with psychology or body language, or the way how animals interact, that is the book. That is not stuff that you can change. That is the reality. Okay? Now here, there are people that write things, right? They say that this is from God, right? So they might write, oh, well, I wrote a book that says God has a perfect mate for you, with the evidence from the Quran and the Bible. Right? So God has a perfect soulmate for you, and here is the proof from what we have discovered from reality, and I'm going to attach it to God, that God has created the world for you to have this amazing partner, right? And I have this amazing knowledge in this book that I wrote by my own hand, but you want it? $9.99. Okay? If you don't pay $9.99, I'm going to sue you for stealing my stuff. So I'm going to put a copyright on it because it didn't come from God. It came from myself. I worked hard on this book. So you're going to have to pay me money. Or, you know what? Here's how you get salvation so you could save yourself from eternal pain. So you go to heaven. And how much is heaven worth to you? Isn't it worth your whole life and everything that's around you? Because if you understand what the word infinity means, whatever you gain, even if you are the richest man in the world, it is only a drop in the bucket of what you would gain on forever in heaven, right? So when God puts us back online, we get to build forever. So whatever you get here, even if you had everything that's in the world, you are going to get more in the very, very long run. So imagine going to somebody, it's like, hey, I can get you to that place. But from what I discovered from God, I wrote this in this book, it's $20. And if you don't want it, then you can't go to heaven, as per what I'm saying. Because you know what? This information is going to give you an amazing price at the end. But to you right now, it's worth a spit, $20. Like, you see how it's dangerous? And you see why, like, whatever they're earning is disgusting. It's gross. It's killing them. Because they're deluding people, they're deluding themselves, and then they're attaching it to God. And if it has any concepts of truth, they are like trading forever and like a huge resources of gain to a little like speck, a peanut, right? Now the next verse after this. How many times have you heard from certain groups of people about the concept of purgatory? Okay. Or in other people, it's like, well, you know what? No worries. Just because you said these magic words, okay, you said this statement, right? Because you said this statement, God will put you in hell for a few days, okay? Just a few days, and then you go to heaven, okay? So if that is the truth, that if people are going to go to hell for some people are going to go to hell for a few days and a few hours, and then they go live forever in heaven, then there's no concept of fear anymore. Why would you worry? Just say the magic words. What's the magic word? God gave us water. If you say God gave us water, eventually you're going to burn in hell, and then the water will come and like it washes your sins away, and then you're in heaven. That is a problem that you are creating where there is no concept of fear. Just because I said those magic words, now I will get to heaven no matter what. So no matter what I do on earth, no matter how I lie to people and however much destruction and corruption I do, I said the words that matter. So I will eventually go to heaven. Even if I burn 1,000,000 years in hell, right? Even if they say, if I burn 1,000,000 years, right? I still have infinity in heaven. So it doesn't matter. Even if it's 10 million years burning in hell. At the end of the day, if I get to heaven, heaven's going to be longer than whatever I burnt in hell. So that's why it does not make sense. That's why God says that whoever makes an error, right? And that error encompasses him, right? So some people where it's like, hey, you know what? Like, I shouldn't be a sexual deviant. I know it's wrong. Well, I couldn't help myself this time and I did something, okay? Oh, I felt bad. This is wrong. God, I promise you, I'll try to never do that again. I won't do it again. Please come back to my life. I repent. I'm done. I won't do it. I know it's wrong, okay? That person is realizing his guilt. He confessed to his guilt, and then he's working towards making himself better so he doesn't fall. If he slips again, he can keep trying to stay away from it, and that guilt feeling is important. And then some people, it's like, oh, well, that's sexual deviancy. That's bad. You guys shouldn't do it. And then he goes, does it, or she goes, does it. And then it becomes part of them. So they constantly do it. They stop feeling bad. Well, that person just took a vice. He took a sin, and he made it part of him. It encompassed him. It started becoming his thoughts, his desires, whatever he wants. That person, as God says here, and this is just a rule, okay? So there's many rules. I mean, there's many situations and conditions that would put someone in hell, or someone can get an intercession, or someone can get forgiven based upon the whole thing. It's not just single incidents, but sometimes a single event can lead you to hell, because you have to be very clear that you're going to hell with the intention that you've done, and you have to know that this is the end result and you chose it. Some people, there is no turning back. I do believe there is always a way to turn back, but sometimes it's such a difficult task to accomplish, which makes it close to impossible. And there's sometimes where people they will not take that initiative. The devil's one of them, Iblis. I'm sure that God is more forgiving and more merciful than people would imagine. If Iblis or Lucifer picks a human and bows down to him now, saying, God, okay, you know what? I was wrong. Okay? I think there would be chances for him to go try to recover. Okay? But God promised us that he wouldn't do that. God promised us that he's going to hell. But I don't think that doesn't mean that the option wasn't open for him. God knows that he will not take that option. Now, of course, that is a lot of theology and a lot of pondering to be thinking about at that point. But to get back to us as human beings, if you take away the concept of hell forever, then you took away the concept of fear. You took away the concept of responsibility or standing up for what you need to do. Because no matter what you do, you're forgiven, you're pardoned. You're just going to go through punishment and you're done. So how many groups of people from all over the world, because I can tell you Christians say similar things. If you say Jesus died on a cross, you are going to heaven eventually. Okay, you might sit in purgatory, you might go in hell or whatever, and then God will cleanse you and then you go to heaven. But now imagine the mentality of a person who went to hell, okay, for not even like years. Let's say he sat for an hour, okay, in hell, and then he goes to heaven. He's going to be in shock. You just completely traumatized, and this person is done. Like, you understand, this person's seen the worst that can happen to him. There is nothing that's going to give him that joy again, because he realized how much he was disconnected from his Lord, disconnected from reality, that he didn't want anything to do with his Lord. He's completely disconnected from God. And then all of a sudden he's going to come back and be connected to God by force. Like, this is the concepts that doesn't make sense to a logical mind who understands how like emotions and relationships work. Now you have also the Sunnis and the Shias from people who follow the Prophet who say similar things. If you say La ilaha illallah, that is capable enough for you to get into heaven, despite you committing all the things that God told you that you're going to hell. And some of the things, if you do them, you get double the punishment. For example, like cheating on your spouse or indulging in someone who's married. Those are things that will put you in hell, give you double the punishment if you do not correct your ways. Murder. But to them, no, this is all forgiven. And you're just going to touch it says right here, like, we're just going to touch the fire for a few days and nothing happens to us. Then we're good. It's just a scratch. So if someone comes to you and says, like, you know what, like, it's okay, those people are just going to burn for a little bit and then they'll go to heaven. And God's telling you what to do. This is the beauty of the Quran. And be like, well, how do you know? Do they, like, God promised them this? Not people, like they themselves. Have they talked to God and God said, like, you know what, yeah, fine, I'll put you in heaven for a little bit and then you go to heaven? They didn't. Because if God gave them that promise, God doesn't break his promises. Now, on the other side, right, the people who believed and did righteous deeds, who corrected themselves, who corrected the world around them, who wanted people to connect. They were looking out for humanity in the name of God. They were doing the things that make us human in the name of God. They are in heaven eternally, right? Here we have the fire eternally. There is no like a little bit here and then a little bit there. It's eternally. If there is concepts of intercession, which there is intercession, not the way you might have heard if you were aligning to a previous cult. But if you are by the scale that you are worthy of going to hell, God can intercede on your behalf because you've done something where God is going to pardon the thing that would put you in hell. He would intercede for you prior to you going to hell, and then you go to heaven. So you don't touch the fire. You're just looking at it. You think that you're going at it. You're going through the pain of someone about to go to hell, and then God goes, well, because of so and so, or because someone did this on your behalf, or someone made this prayer that applies to you, boom, you're in heaven. Intercession. But that person never went into hell. See what I'm saying? And so, yeah, hell is eternal. Heaven is eternal. There is no wishy-washy business of one going on the other and one going into one and then going to heaven later. Now, this is something that you should always remember, this verse, okay? This is the covenant that God has made with the people he favored over the rest of humanity for them to deliver the truth and to help people understand the truth that came from God. But for you to achieve that, for you to get into the mentality, to be able to help your fellow man understand what it is to be human, to have that moral compass, for God to grant you vision, for God to be part of your life, for you to have this relationship that you could always rely on, where God is the strength, the power, the way for you to overcome any obstacle, for you to stand up for the truth, for you to say words that people appreciate. Well, you have to do your part. What is your part? You only worship God. You only serve God. In everything you do, it has to be servitude for God. You're working for a bank that charges interest. You're not working for God. You're serving a bank that is serving the evil plan, is serving the devil. Are you working for the government? How are you working for the government? You're a military, okay? You're in the military for the government. Is the government fighting in the name of God? No, you are not serving God. I know these are things that are, well, what do we do? This is where it's between you and your relationship and what the verses are telling you. You are here to serve God. Find a system to serve God. If you are forced to be part of a system that's not serving God, then start being as rational and as objective as possible to not help the system, but rather help yourself by taking the money to put it into other systems that are serving God. Okay, so this is where people get a little iffy with me. No, certain jobs you shouldn't take. It's not haram or halal. It's not forbidden or permissible. It's how loyal are you to God? If you are in your mind thinking that, well, it's okay for me to serve a bank that charges interest, then you're showing less loyalty to God. Therefore, the devil is more susceptible to taking more of you and changing your mindset. See who you're serving. And if you are part of that process, make sure your intentions is for the good, for something to do with God, and you're just having to deal with a semi-pharaoh, if that makes sense. Those governments are not fighting in the name of God. They're fighting in the name of their ruler and whatever plan they want. They're killing people. You shouldn't be part of that process. See what I'm saying? But anyways, that's going to be opened up a few times in the Quran. But number one is to serve God. With all your mind, soul, you spend your time thinking about God. Anything you're doing, you're working to make this world a better place in the name of God. And you're only here temporarily. And whatever, that extra $100 is not needed if I'm making $80 and I'm content with my $80. If that makes sense. Now, right after God saying that worshiping God and serving God, be good to your parents. Yes, parents are something that is extremely important for you to take care of when you are getting older in age, right? Because that is when you're going to start to understand of how much your parents did for you. But us as little children, we are programmed to see our parents as people who can handle a lot. They can handle it all because that is what we got accustomed to, that our parents are handling things. This is if your parents were people who took care of their children, understood some of their responsibility. But when we get older, they can't do that. So they start looking a little weaker in our eyes. And at that point, we're not supposed to try to get back our retribution for what they did to us as little children. In fact, it's the opposite. We have to put up with any signs of narcissism, any signs of things that we don't want to have from our parents, but you treat them in the most fair, just way possible. If you're upset at them, don't yell. Sure, okay, fine. Don't spend your whole day thinking about all the negative things that they did. Just go spend your whole day of making your day better about what you need to accomplish. You are not your child's pet, but you are not your parents' pet, but your parents are some people who are very, very respectable in the eyes of God to you. If they weren't part of your life, if they weren't, just forgive them and move on and try to serve God by making the world a better place for your parents. Show them that, you know what, maybe you guys had a rough life. Maybe you guys didn't have a relationship, but look how much your son or your daughter has excelled because I started to believe in God. They might be blind to this fact, but God isn't. God knows what they're concealing, and God knows what you're speaking, and it's all judged. He likes when you make your parents feel comfortable, that they're not under oppression, that things are being easy for them. Because the first 2 years, your parents your guardian had to take care of you, and it's not an easy job. Okay? Now, the second on the list after that is your relatives, right? If you have relatives that are struggling, make sure you prioritize them in the giving of the money, okay? giving of the charity give, because your relatives are the closest to you. You need to make sure your foundation and where you're from is really taken care of, okay? And then you can start to branch out bigger. There's some of us that come from really broken communities, right? You still have to try to take care of them, despite them being like, twisted, evil, and all sorts of things that they come with. You remind them with God, you help them while you can, you make a proper judgment, but you don't try to take your retribution every time they cross you or they kick you in the back or they do things despite you trying to help them. Because at the end of the day, your job is to try to make things better. And guess what? When you are showing this forgiveness and this mercy, and yet you're standing your ground, you're not getting played with, you're not a goody-goody two-shoe that people step on you all the time, but they know that they could rely on you when you need help, people start to imitate. People start to be like, wait, this man is, hey, like other people other than our families talking about him nicely, so maybe I should learn from them, okay? Now, after the relatives, the poor, the orphans, the life of an orphan is not an easy one. The life of an orphan is not an easy one, because you could see the importance of a parent. God is telling you to be very good to your parents after the servitude of God, right? Like it's God and then your parents. So how about the orphans that had to go through life without a parent? All of these people are fighting about with their parents, that their parents not letting them do this. Put yourself in an orphan's shoes where you don't have the ability to fight. You would wish for you to have a parent to fight with as a child. It's not an easy reality, right? But some of the strongest and most capable people in the world are orphans because they had to condition themselves as a child that, I need to love myself. I need to find the emotions and the stability from myself because no one else can provide that for me. No one's going to love you like a parent can love you, right? And those that their parents don't love them, you should just forgive them and move on. It is very difficult to deal with parents that do not know how to express love. But at the end of the day, God is putting that as a test for you to make you as a better human being. You lacked love as a child. Well, then show more love for someone else. But you shouldn't be upset at your parents because this is the ability. This is what they grew up with. This is their relationship with God. And you could see a very good family example, which is Abraham to Isaac to Jacob to Joseph. Is because they had that loving relationship. They respected their dad. They had love for their kids. That family outlasted time, technically, because we still hear about them for how great and tightly knit they were, and everybody loves each other. And yes, then you have Ishmael as well. There was no hate between Isaac and Ishmael as people think. They were the prototypes of humans, like the humanity. They were the best relationships you could find. So after the orphans are the poor people. These are people who are the orphans and the poor people. There are people who are going through extreme hardship. They have to sustain and they have to be tolerant. The more you help them, the more you feel the more you are a better person. This is something that's very easy and clear. So do it. Everyone wants to take care of orphans. Everyone says, yes, it's important to take care of poor people. Everybody knows it, but very little people do it. And this is where the verse is ending with. People understood that this is the covenant. This is what people need to do to be a better human being, but only if most of the people turn away. No, my parents are stupid. My parents, I don't want anything to do with my parents. They ruined my life. Okay, they did feed you. I don't care. It's not enough, And my relatives, they're always trying to take my money. They don't give me, okay. Yeah, orphans, we need, of course, it's such a sad life for an orphan. When you donate for an orphan or when you try to help with the orphanage, I will, when time is soon, and the poor people need to eat, so let's give them money. No, that guy's a liar, don't feed him. And that guy is just a drug addict. That guy he has money. It's always an excuse to not do it. But there's only a few people who are running orphanages. There are a few people who are adopting and taking care of maybe the word adopt, who are taking care of orphans. There are a few people that are really honoring their parents, okay? And taking care of their relatives. Two part of the things that are part of the covenant for you to improve is you have to do your ritual prayers. You have to do your connections with God. You have to give from your money that you have been provided. You have to help when you're being asked to help. That is the charity, the zakat, because charity is not just the charity of money and wealth, which is, yes, a resource is something that can help a lot. But now I want to end with this note. For me, I've always considered, this is me personally, I always considered as love, the the synonym of the explanation for the word love for me is support. No, sorry, sacrifice. Love for me is sacrifice, is the ability to give something without wanting something in return. So I'm just giving you for you to feel better, to get stronger, to take care of whatever you need to do. And I found two ways to provide love. It's the sacrifice of resources and then the sacrifice of time. The sacrifice of resources, that's support. People need to be supported. While the sacrifice of time, that's care. So you don't necessarily need to have a lot of money to support or to love somebody. You can just spend time with them. And spending time with them is showing that you care for that entity, for that individual. Some people care for their car a lot. Why? Because they spend all day talking about their car and and then they want to support their car because they love it. Why? Because they're just putting all this money that they know that they're not going to get back. But that's an inanimate object that's supposed to take you from point A to point B, and that's how it is. And that thing is serving God more than you at that point. Okay, and then there's other people who want to show love to God. Why? Well, he doesn't need your support. He appreciates your care. But if you are supporting, you're supporting the world that's around you. You're taking your sources and you're giving it in the name of God, and God will give it back to you. Okay? But you're not looking per se for the reward. Your reward is that God is accepting of you. That's what you want. Just like how if I give a gift to my girlfriend, I just want her to be happy with me. Just like if I give a gift to my parents, I want them to be happy with me. And if I spend time with somebody that we enjoy our presence, I want them to know that I care. I don't want them to think that I'm trying to just play them. So who do you love? Who are you sacrificing for today? Is it your parents, your relatives? Is there an orphan that you know that you should spend some time with or maybe support them in some way? You don't have to be very point blank about it. There's ways of talking nicely to people, which I believe was part of the verse, where it says, and say what is best to people and establish the prayer. So establish the prayer and give charity. So start talking nicely to people. Be good to people. If you're wronged, bite your tongue a little bit, and then God gives you permission that if they're wronging you too much, you can put your foot down a little bit, make them be quiet, and you move on. But then you go to your parents, you shouldn't do that. You should try to hold on to your tongue as much as you can, and if needs be, you leave. But you always remind them sooner or later, you know what, I still love you. You know, I thank you, and I appreciate you. Relatives, the poor, the orphans, saying good to people, establish the charity, establish the prayer. Now you're working with God. The next step is to help your fellow man. I say that. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Praise to God. Peace. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.